morning. Welcome to Lacrosse Now. That is Travis Eldridge. I am Tom Eschen. We got another great show for you today at the end of July, but we got plenty of stuff to talk about. We got the PLL in action, Athletes Unlimited, Amanda Johansen. She's a captain this week. She's going to join the show, talk about some of the rules, take us inside the scenes of really what being a captain is all about in this league, which will now continue to take place in the next few weeks. Yeah, we got Tom Schreiber from the Archers joining us as well. Some terrific guests. Tom is back from vacation, so I don't have to carry the load this week. Yeah, this is great. I am. Yep, I missed you all, most importantly. Of course you did. Thank you for your patience. Anyway, lots of good stuff to talk about. Also, some college rule changes, both on the men's and the women's side. We'll get to those. Throw some ideas out there, some possible rule changes we might look for in the future, maybe some smaller stuff. Yeah, but we'll nuanced things. Let's start with the PLL. Just finished their stop in Fairfield, Connecticut. They head down to Dallas, Texas this week. But we're going to have some fun here. We're past the midway point of the season. Still a lot to figure out in terms of positioning in the standings. But with NFL training camps kicking off this week, we're going to do a little comparison, and we're going to pick PLL teams with their NFL team comparison. Who goes hand in hand with what we've seen so far this year? Do you want to kick us off, or do you want me to? I'll begin here. Actually, you got the Whip Snakes, right? I do have the Whip Snakes. Why don't you start with the Whip Snakes, since they are the #1 team at the table? All right, so let's start with the Whips. Obviously, a team that throughout the history of the PLL has been dominant. They won storied. They won the first 2 titles we ever saw in the league's history. Lost in the championship game last year. So for that, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're like the Chiefs of the PLL because in terms of like what they've done recently, very similar. They even, despite the fact that the Chiefs didn't even make it to the Super Bowl last year, they walk in this year as a perennial favorite because of Patrick Mahomes and all the different pieces they still have, minus Tyreek Hill. But I think it's very similar to the Whip Snakes. Like, we're at this point of the season, the Whips have done essentially what we expect them to do. It's almost like everybody else is taking headlines away because the Whip Snakes are almost boring at this point because they just get the job done. Like, very much like the Chiefs were a year ago, where like it was the midway point of the season and everyone kept waiting for the Chiefs to be dominant, and they weren't, but they kept winning. And that's kind of like how I feel the Whip Snakes have been this year. Like, you look at guys like Matt Rambo and Zed Williams, kind of the equivalent of Mahomes, where like they are some of the best players in the world, and they're just getting it done. They're doing their thing, and that's what we've seen so far this year. So that is my comparison between these two. And like I said, for the Whip Snakes, everybody expects them to be there in the championship conversation at the end of the year, and I think many people think the same as the Chiefs. I would say that they're closer to the Chiefs of last year than this year. With Tyreek Hill gone, I don't know if the Chiefs are has as much going on for them as the Whip Snakes do in comparison. Yeah, that's fair. This time around, I think that the Whip Snakes maybe have a better chance to win than the Chiefs do in their leagues, respectively. I mean, we are at the midway point of this year, and we haven't seen the Chiefs get together yet. I'm just looking at it on paper. But yes, you're right. They're probably closer to the team that was walking into last year with the Chiefs, but I think what we've seen between the two is kind of similar. I like that comparison. All right, I got Atlas, so we'll continue here. Yeah, what do you got? I think the Atlas remind me of the Cardinals from Arizona. Feels like a team with a lot of young talent kind of ready to take that next step and be one of the top-tier teams in the league. Got rid of some veterans. Larry Fitzgerald moves on. And then you have like that core, that nucleus, Kyler Murray, and with like the Jeff Teat, Chris Gray, DeAndre Hopkins, and all of that. You got J.J. Watt as kind of the elder statesman. I got him as like a comparison. Tucker Durkin, a guy that's a great comparison. For a long time. Trevor Baptiste gives you kind of that Buda Baker type feel as a game changer, a guy that can really make a difference. Yeah, I went deep on this. So I like this. You had a team in the Atlas that had guys that moved on. They had to clear some house there with Larry Fitzgerald. Yeah, he was a great example for them, but kind of was holding them back in that receiver department, and now they get guys like Christian Kirk in there as well. So you move on from the years of Paul Rabel and Rob Pennell and Kyle Hartzell, and you have this whole new crop of young players that feel like they're ready to take that next step. And I think the Atlas is that, and so are the Cardinals too.
I really like that. My question is, if Jeff Teed is Kyler Murray, does he have to study 4 hours of game film every day in his new contract?
I don't know. I mean, Jeff Teed, he can just walk on a lacrosse field and be just like Kyler Murray and on a football field and kind of just have it click. So I wouldn't put anything past. I think he probably puts the work in even voluntarily as well. He loves lacrosse, so he plays it probably more than most, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it with Dane Smith when we had him on the show last week. What Jeff Teed did in that Sixers game against Team USA with the one-handed behind the back. I mean, he makes plays that very few people in the world can make. And I think you see the same thing with a guy like Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Like him escaping the pocket and then throwing the ball downfield and doing things that not many people in the world and in the league can do.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have sort of the cohort with Chris Gray and DeAndre Hopkins kind of role of making some of those splash plays and finding his role too. So, yeah, I got Cardinals for Atlas.
That's a good comparison. I like that. I like youth.
I feel like the Cardinals, if they play well, they can go to the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, look at what they did the start of last year.
Right.
Like, they were a team that everyone was like, they're the team. And then they kind of fell off.
I might trust Ben Rubio more than Cliff Kingsbury, though. I will put that line in the sand.
I mean, I don't think kind of similar in terms of like young, new blood type. There's a lot of comparisons there. I like this.
I'm not as big of a high on.
I know you're not a Kingsbury fan.
Yeah.
I will say, I wonder with the Atlas and all this youth, I wonder how they're going to hold up come playoff time.
I mean, we saw that with the Cardinals last year. It's like when it gets to be crunch time, how do you respond?
Because it's like, especially with all these, a lot of these rookies and guys like Jeff Teeter are coming right off an indoor season and have played internationally. Like, it's easy to be sharp early. It's harder to keep that and maintain that throughout the year and still be sharp come August and September.
You got to stay healthy. So
that too.
I mean, Trevor Baptiste being out last weekend hurt them quite a bit. They just didn't get the ball enough, it felt like, consistently to get themselves in the group. They went on some runs, but weren't able to I mean, they scored a bunch of goals, but I think if you have Baptiste in there, that gives you just more momentum and more control, especially keeping the other team on the defensive end instead of offense, which is against Redwoods.
He's a game changer. Like, Paul Carcaterra on the broadcast was talking about his kind of mid-season selections for awards, and he was his MVP, and I think that's hard to argue. He has been one of the most important players in the league. And when Greg Gorenlian won MLL MVP, his face-off percentage is up there over 70%. That's where Trevor has been for most of this year. So there's the comparison there. Him not being there is huge. They need him back.
Yeah, you're right. For them to be successful, make that run, that could be the difference down the stretch.
For sure. So, all right, Atlas and Cardinals. I like that one. Why don't we go to the Archers?
Okay.
A team that I loved quite dearly. We're going to have Tom Schreiber here on in a second, but I kind of liken them to the Green Bay Packers, especially the Packers teams we've seen here over the last couple of years. Because I mean, you look at with Aaron Rodgers and all that they've had around them, like they've been great teams in the regular season. And the Archers in the regular season in most of these years so far in PLL history, they've been a really good team, a team that you say, all right, they got a chance to run after this. And never once have they made the championship game. Just like the Packers, they keep getting to the NFC Championship or the divisional round.
It's the NFC Championship.
Yeah, and they can't quite get over the hurdle, despite the fact that they have a guy who may be the best quarterback in the league. And you look at like last year's Archers team, they had the best attackman in the league in Grant Ament, and they had the best midfielder in the league in Tom Schreiber, and yet they're not one of the teams that are playing for the title at the end. So I think I liken it a lot with that. I mean, this year's Green Bay team has a lot more question marks. I think the Archers this year have done more to bolster pieces around the already really talented pieces than Green Bay has done here over the last couple of years. The other thing that stood out to me is kind of underrated defenses for both. Like the Packers last year, a lot of the attention on Aaron Rodgers because he was the MVP and deservedly so, and he was terrific. But their defense was pretty good. Top half the league. Rashawn Gary had a great year with 9.5 sacks from the linebacker position. And the Archers, you look at them, they're tied in the PLL so far this season for the second fewest goals that anybody has given up in the league. They're only one behind the Whip Snakes, who have given up 62. The Archers have given up 63. So as much attention as the offense has gotten, I think that defense is going to be really important down the stretch, and it actually has been pretty good. And you look at what they did this past week, it was their defense starting transition to get to the offense that caused a lot of the offensive spark that allowed them to come from behind in the early deficit against the Cannons. So I like that comparison as well.
Another good comparison between the two would be the special teams category, you could say. I mean, if you look at the face-off facts and some of the other situations, Green Bay, as you know, has had terrible special teams over the years. And Archers, that is one of their weaknesses, you could say. I mean, for an offense that great, they don't get the ball enough. So, and then that's a huge problem for them.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Inacio had a great game.
He did play well this week.
He had a great game against the
Cannons.
Weekend.
He had a great game.
Over 70%. However, it is kind of head-scratching that up until this point, every year so far, that has been one of the major question marks for the Archers. Yeah. They haven't found a way to get him. Like, if I would have, I don't know, if I'm the Archers, at some point, don't you have to go, I've got all these offensive pieces, like Connor Fields and Matt Moore and Tom Schreiber and Cranham and Will Manning, Marcus Ullman. You almost have so much there. Can we make a move just to get a face-off guy?
Yeah.
Anybody who's going to put you over 50, 60% every day. Because if they were over 50% every game, I can't imagine this team has the number of losses they've had over the last 3 or 4 years that they've had.
Yeah, and you'll hear from Tom Schreiber in a moment. I will say, talking about Connor Fields, they felt like there's an energy around him, and he, I think, maybe could be an X factor for this team down the stretch. Can make a big difference for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I got Chrome, so I got another young team. I'm going to compare them, and this is projecting out to the Bengals.
Oh.
The Cincinnati Bengals.
Joe Burrow?
A team that's rebuilt and now has a lot of talent to be able to contend. Don't forget the Bengals went from 4-11-1 to 10-7 in a Super Bowl appearance. Chrome last year were 2-7. I mean, they're in the top half of the league this year playing good lacrosse, and they've sort of rebuilt everything from the ground up. You have a guy, and Michael Sowers last year was hurt for most of his rookie season. Joe Burrow hurt for most of his rookie season, back healthy, making an impact once again. I got some more comparisons. You got
Michael Sowers on the Water Dogs.
True. That is also, and I'm thinking about Logan Wisnowskis coming in and Brendan Nichtern. I looked at the wrong line in my thing. I apologize for that. So you got Logan Wisnowskis, Brendan Nichtern as some of those new faces that fill that role of Joe Burrow. And then in addition to that, you got guys like Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, some other weapons, some young weapons at that I feel like they're very comparatively, that you cannot put them next to each other. And then talk about special teams, Connor Farrell, and then you have that kicker, Evan McPherson, who has all that spunk.
Fearless.
Personality and all that. They kind of have that same thing going on. So I kind of think that they have the same kind of feel. A team that has tried to really rebuild. I think the Bengals, of course, have done that. And you get some guys like Wisnowskis, won the Tewaaraton, came in, as a national champion and all that. And you have that similarity with Joe Burrow that has the winning mentality, and he's brought that there. But along with Brendan Nichtern, too, I think has done a good job. So you have kind of those two working together in tandem to really make this a successful Chrome team.
Yeah, I think you look at what the Bengals did, and obviously for so long it was kind of like the Andy Dalton era there in Cincinnati, and it never quite got over the hurdle. And I almost think of that as like the John Galloway and Joel White, Jordan Wolf type of era for this Chrome/Rattlers.
They were a little more successful.
Right, that's what I was going to say. The lacrosse version of it actually had some things they accomplished.
A little bit better,
Andy Dalton didn't quite get it over the hurdle very often, him and Marvin Lewis and all that. But they were competitive for years.
Yes. You're right. They were very competitive.
They were always they were in the mix there in the NFC North.
So I'm going Chrome Bengals. Yeah.
All right. Okay. You mentioned Michael Sowers.
Yes, I did.
So
erroneously.
I will go to the Water Dogs, and I know I'm looking at this mainly as of this year for the Water Dogs, and so for that I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. Because obviously the Water Dogs had a great regular season last year, but you look at what they've done this year, and they've started to claw their way back. They're right there at 3-3 so far this year, kind of like the Chargers a year ago, finished 9-8. But I'm looking at Michael Sowers kind of like Justin Herbert. Because even as good as the Water Dogs were last year, Michael Sowers played one game, so it wasn't a factor. So I'm looking at, everybody walked into last year and they saw Justin Herbert, and it's like, eyes wide open. Every analyst says, oh, this guy is unbelievable. And the results weren't quite there. And I think it's similar with Michael Sowers from what we've seen this year. The results on the field for the Water Dogs aren't eye-popping, and they aren't jaw-dropping. But everybody, when you talk about Michael Sowers and you see him play on the field, you're like, this guy is special.
Yeah.
And so I think in a lot of ways, that's a really good comparison because like this guy is just unbelievable. His shake still is there. Like it was like it's almost gotten forgotten about because he missed a majority of his rookie season. But this dude is special.
Yeah, he's been a bit overshadowed by the Jeff Teats of the world.
Yeah,
sort of overtaking him, and of course not having the Ivy League last year, and Sowers moving to Duke, and he wasn't himself from.
It wasn't
the same Princeton Michael Sowers that we had seen a few years back, and I think that's a good comparison. As Herbert kind of at times gets lost in the shuffle too, because they got Mahomes out there and some of these other young talented quarterbacks that you kind of like, Justin Herbert. You put him on the Kansas City Chiefs, and maybe you're talking about Justin Herbert as a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Well, and I think it even goes deeper. Like you look at both of their college careers, and Justin Herbert was kind of a disappointment at Oregon. Like in terms of them being a team that was supposed to be on the national,
his team did not.
Yeah, like he was good,
success,
he was fine, but the team success, like they're looking at Justin Herbert, and for years he had been a top prospect as a quarterback to come out of college, and he never quite had the postseason run that I think a lot of people expected. And that's the same thing with Sowers at Princeton.
Yeah.
Like, he never made the postseason when he was playing for the Tigers. Finally did there in his grad year at Duke. So I think there's a lot of comparisons there. The other comparison that I think is really interesting with this team is the upside. Because you look at the Chargers last year, they didn't make the playoffs, but they took it to the Chiefs. They were the first team last year that showed people, hey, this Kansas City team isn't unbeatable. Just like the Water Dogs this year and beating the Whipsnakes in Minnesota. Like, hey, everybody, we can play with the best teams in the league. So I think that upside and showing that ability is a similar thing too. So it's good. The Water Dogs are a team that I think now that they've got Dylan Ward back in goal since he's finished up his indoor season, I think they are a team that could sneak up on just about anybody in the league. Like, they're a team I don't want to play in the playoffs.
No, I think that's a really good comparison. I don't think Chargers have never really been good in the playoffs, so I think that also is a good comparison. You don't know.
It's true, yeah.
There's a lot of unknown there. You're just waiting for them to win an important game at some point. All right, I'm going to move on, and we'll go with the Redwoods.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to compare the Redwoods to the Dallas Cowboys. They're a team that has a lot of pieces, but you're not really sure how they all fit together to make things work, right? Like that's, to me, how it all makes sense here. You got Rob Pennell, kind of like a Dak Prescott type, He is
a big Cowboys guy.
He's continued to be productive and one of the more productive guys in the league over the course of his career. Of course, he came over a little later to the PLL, but you kind of get my drift, and also came over later to the Redwoods. But their careers, I feel like, have been similar. And then you've got like some other guys that are talented. Like on the Cowboys, you have the Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard kind of confusion, and I feel like Ryder Garnsey kind of is like Ezekiel Elliott. He's got the flash, but you're not really sure if there's much substance behind it.
Yeah.
Right? Where has that all been? And then I like, a guy like Nakai Montgomery and the Tony Pollard comparison there. So, you have that as well. And then T. Erlin, like a Micah Parsons, a game changer, a guy that can go out and win you a game at the face-off X. And then on the defensive end, Garrett Epple and the Travion Diggs comparison there, being able to cause turnovers, defense turning to offense on that end. Miles Jones, to me, has that CD Lamb potential as a home run threat of some of those two-pointers that we saw him hit in their last game in that win. And I think you go down the list, Dalton Schultz and the Sergio Perkovic kind of has that feel as another guy that is a boomer bust, but you have a lot of those.
Yeah.
You have a lot of guys that are sort of the boomer bust, and the consistency to me with the Cowboys is similar to the consistency with the Redwoods. And a team that you're like, they got some good guys. I mean, last year they had Amari Cooper. And Amari Cooper, in the last couple of years, that never really was the Amari Cooper we saw with the Raiders. So I just don't know. And the Redwoods, of course, they won this last weekend, and they had a big win at that.
Yeah, it was a good win for them.
They came back a couple times and everything that involved that. I don't know how everybody is going to fit together consistently. Like, I feel like that's what the Cowboys have been. Yeah, they look great. Everybody's the bandwagon is exciting, and then next couple of weeks they kind of fall off. And I think the Redwoods have kind of been that way over the course of their PLL existence.
You know what it is, and I like what you said about the Cowboys, and on paper, both teams look absurd.
Right.
Like on paper, I'm an Eagles fan, so on paper you look at the Cowboys and you go, the Eagles, especially last year, the Eagles last year's team had no business being in the same conversation as the Cowboys, but yet you're midway through the year and it's like a game difference.
Yeah.
And I think you look at this Redwoods roster, and Dan Orlovsky was on the broadcast, the NFL commentator for ESPN, and he's talking about Miles Jones. He's like, that guy, like is an imposing, unbelievable athlete that walks on the field. And you're like, all right, well, how is he not doing more? Or Sergio Perkovic, same thing. Like these guys are in their generation of college. Like these guys are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so now they're all on the same team.
Yeah. And they've had some good, nice years.
Yeah,
you know?
but it's not. But they haven't gotten over the top. And I mean,
they're not out there winning MVPs.
Yeah, and some of it's. I think some of it speaks to the competition in the league. But I think others, it's like it hasn't all clicked at the right time.
No.
It hasn't all those pieces aren't all clicking at the right time to have success. And that's been the Cowboys. Like they've got all the talent in the world. They had, at some point they had one of the best running backs in the league, one of the top quarterbacks, and one of the best wide receivers, and it didn't work.
No, for some reason it didn't work.
and the best young linebacker, the best quarterback. Yeah. I mean, all these pieces, it didn't work.
No, and I think that's where the Redwoods have been. And they've done better as the season has gone on. I think they've figured themselves out more, but I don't know if they can continue to do that on a weekly basis. I just don't know. And I think that's the story with the Cowboys. You don't know what they will be able to do if they can be consistent in that. And I think the inconsistency is what ties these teams together. Yeah,
good news for Nat St. Laurent is he doesn't have Jerry Jones breathing down his neck.
Yes, he doesn't. That's true. I don't know
who
Mike McCarthy.
That would be.
He's his own Jerry Jones.
Yeah, he's got to make his own moves.
Yes.
All right, I got the last one, right?
Second to last.
Oh, you got one more. Okay. Yeah. I've got Chaos. And this is a comparison that'll be very near and dear to a lot of players' hearts in the PLL because we got a lot of Baltimore guys. How about the Ravens from this past year? Because the Ravens this past year were just decimated by injuries. Like how many running backs did they use?
That's true.
A year ago, it's like 5, 6. They kept signing guys off the free agent wire, bringing them in. They would be fine. Then they'd get hurt. They bring in another guy.
Yeah.
And I look at all the indoor guys that have just been added back to the Chaos roster and them trying to figure things out with guys like Dane Smith and Josh Byrne back. And I look at that like when Lamar Jackson went down for Baltimore. Like, these guys are game changers. And so now they're back, but now it's a completely different team when those guys are there. Like, I talked to Dane Smith last week, and like he was talking about just trying to get your feel back in the field game and how they play offense differently than maybe anybody else in the PLL. And so that's similar to how this Ravens offense was built for Lamar Jackson. When Lamar Jackson gets hurt, the offense has to change because there's not another Lamar Jackson in the entire league. So you can't just bring somebody else in to replace him. And I think that's very similar with the type of athletes and the style of play that the Chaos have now that they're back to full strength. And so there's an adjustment period. And I think that's what we've seen here in the last couple of weeks. They still are sitting on just one win. Like, this is it's now boom or bust time. And I wonder if this Chaos team goes the way of the Ravens this past year, where they had some promise and they looked like a team with Lamar Jackson coming off that MVP season that may make a run, and they just never quite did, and they fell off and missed the playoffs. I'm wondering if that's the Chaos this year after they had won the title a year ago, and it just doesn't click in time for them to make a run.
Yeah, I mean, add in that those guys, Byrne and Smith, played sixes as well. They played a lot of lacrosse.
Ton of lacrosse.
I mean, you talked to Tom Schreiber about that. He
said,
he's the guy that played the whole box season, and he played sixes, and he goes, yeah, the All-Star break came at a great time to relax a little bit. And, with all that in mind, that those guys, Dane Smith, Josh Byrne and company, they all played up on through, up until they started the PLL season. And don't forget, these guys don't have a lot of time together. This is professional lacrosse as we know it, but they're not practicing every single day. They get, a day, maybe a day and a half to really acclimate themselves together again. And last year, the Chaos made that run because they did that as the season went on. This year, last year they didn't have a box.
NLL.
They didn't have a box season, so they were able to sort of figure things out. This year, they're picking it up a month in. They got to figure things out quickly, and I think they're too behind the 8 ball to be able to really come back and get themselves back into play.
But I will say, a team that if they do get into the tournament, like in the playoffs, which isn't hard to do in the PLL, you just got to beat one other team.
Don't be last.
Don't be last. If you ain't first, you're last. Well, if you're not last, you're in the PLL. And so if they're in and they start, like they win a couple games down the stretch and the offense clicks, it's all it takes. So a team that, like the Ravens, if they're in, like I'm scared. Like I don't want to face that offense, but they got to get in and they got to figure something out here down the stretch.
I'm sure they're heavily motivated to go and qualify in that top 4 too, to go play in the tournament.
Yeah, could you imagine
right?
them in that
You saw those guys
series?
in the sixes, the World Games, and how insanely good they were. And now imagine if you get the chaos into that 14 tournament in January of next year, February, and around there.
The sixes tournament.
So you got to be finished in the top 4 to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could be another motivator. It's like, well, maybe we're not going to win the title this year, but if we can make a run, win a couple games, get ourselves in the top 4, we could be looking at one sooner than later. So that's just something else to keep in mind.
Yeah.
All right, last one. I'll save the best for last, I guess.
What do you got?
I got Cannons.
What are they?
We're going Jaguars, unfortunately. No Urban Meyer comparisons here. They take that out of the equation. There's nothing involved like that. But you got a team with maybe generational talent, but the team just can't figure it out around them. And you don't feel badly, but you're like, man, you wish that guy had more around him.
It's kind of wasted.
Wish he could be in a better position to succeed and play in the playoffs and go and win a title. In this Cannons team, they just don't have it. So you got Lyle Thompson for the Cannons. You have Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars. And we talk about these quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, guys going into great situations and being able to profit from that. Trevor Lawrence, maybe if he's in one of those situations, he is profiting, but he's not. As you almost feel like he's wasting his time right now with the Jags. People think they're going to be better this year. And then you look up and down their roster, Jags and Cannons, and you look at the Cannons, like all these attackmen. Jaguars have that in receivers. Jaguars have Chark, Treadwell, Marvin Jones, Tavon Austin, Laviska Shenault, and Agnew as their receivers. I don't know what's going on with that bunch. And then you have a team with the Cannons. You got Lyle Thompson, Asher Knowlton, you got Tierney, Shane Jackson, Sarlambides, Cuccinello. They've been running some of those guys from the box. It's just like, who is playing what where? How do you find a role around a guy that's Lyle Thompson? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Around that center fixture. It's really difficult to do. So the way they're constructed is just difficult for you to watch because you're like, man, Lyle's amazing. And we were watching the game the other day, I'm back on the replay, and you're like, yeah, Lyle's has had 2 goals and assisted on 3 of them over the first 10 first or second quarter.
Yeah, this past week against the Archers, you're talking about Lyle Thompson. I think out of the first 5 goals, he had 3 goals and 2 assists.
Yeah, he's a part of all of them.
He is a hand in everything.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, unlike Trevor Lawrence, who could be involved in every touchdown that the Jaguars scored, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Lyle Thompson shouldn't have to do that. He can, but you're not going to. Chances are you're not going to win if he has to have a hand in every goal that you score.
No, it's too much for anybody.
It's just it's so reliant, and as special as he is, and I think Asher Knowlton probably has the ability to take some of that pressure off, but he hasn't quite gotten there yet.
No.
I think maybe in a couple of years, if this duo would stay together, maybe he could be a little bit of relief, but he hasn't quite reached that spot
I will
yet.
say that Asher, for him, a guy that the offense at High Point ran through him for 4 years.
Yeah.
So for him to be able to transition as well as he has, I think has been really impressive. And I think that he should have kudos for that, which has been nice for Lyle at times, is take the onus off of him. But you just need more. You need more than that.
Yeah,
so.
They need more just Asher. They need some other guys to step up and be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. Our PLL NFL.
We did it.
Comparisons.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think.
Okay, I think they were good.
I thought so,
I liked
too.
mine.
They were fun.
Yeah, yours were good too.
Speaking,
good work, everyone.
Speaking of fun, Tom Schreiber's been fun to watch throughout his PLL career so far. Also part of Team USA for Sixes, getting the silver medal during the World Games. We had a chance to catch up with Tom earlier this week to talk about all of that.
So we are joined by Tom Schreiber right now. Big win over the Cannons over the weekend. You guys put up 17 goals, Tom. 3 goals and 2 assists for yourself. And you've seen now more and more this offense starting to click. What's been the formula these last couple of times we've been able to get big wins?
I think a few things. I think this was the first time that we had kind of, our full lineup with Grant getting back in the mix, and it's only Connor Fields' second game. So seeing those guys, and it's the first time with Matt Moore out there with everybody kind of present. It was fun. I think a lot of things went well for our offense, and then we also had great transition play. I don't know how many goals we got in transition, but I think Latrell Harris had 2, John Robbins had 1. Scott Ratliff had 1, and then I think Trey LeClaire had 1 in transition too. So we did a nice job at that part of the game, and Justin Ignacio got us a bunch of possessions. So it was kind of a combination of a few different things, but it was a lot of fun, and hopefully we could keep it rolling.
You mentioned Grant coming back. What does that piece do for your offense in his reacclimation to it, and when he gets completely up to speed? What does that add dimension-wise for you guys?
A ton. Grant, he's one of the best in the business for a reason. He's crazy dynamic. His speed, his dodging, his feeding obviously is exceptional, and he's just a ridiculous lacrosse player. And anytime you add somebody like that to the mix who can kind of do a number of different things, give us, a great presence below the goal line. He's, pretty dominant in transition. He's excellent on 6-on-6. And anytime you bring in somebody that dynamic to a group, I think that's playing pretty well together. It's only going to help. So we're thrilled to have him back. We're happy. It was kind of tough for somebody like Grant to go down. He's just, as dedicated of a lacrosse player and as prepared as somebody that, that I've ever played with. And to see him not be able to get out there for a while was tough. But we're thrilled to have him back, and we're excited to see what we can do.
Wanted to ask you about Will Manny. He had another, 4 or 5 assists go along with the goal, and he hasn't had double-digit assists in his career. He hadn't since 2018, and so in his entire Archer's career until this year, in which he does. Was there a different emphasis on that in the offense, or is he just sort of finding that role a little bit easier this year to help be a feeder in addition to, obviously, the great finishing he does all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a pretty unique view into Will. Like, we played together, I think our first time was in 7th grade, and played together in high school. And I've never thought of him as just a finisher. I think he kind of blossomed into that role, originally with the Boston Cannons and then with the Lizards and then, with us, just because, he's so good at it. But I've always thought of him as a feeder. He's always been an excellent feeder. He was at UMass. He was just kind of a dodger, a finisher, a feeder, the whole deal. So I'm not shocked that he's kind of found his groove in that part of his game, and he's always been capable of it. And I wouldn't say it's been, an intentional part of what we do, but I think Will has kind of responded really well to however the defense is going to cover us. I think we've seen teams who will short stick. We've seen teams who will slide quick. We've seen teams who won't slide quick. And I think Will has done a really nice job kind of, fitting his game to how we're being played. And, if he has to be a feeder, he can do it. If he has to be a finisher, he can do it. And if he has to dodge, he can do it too. So he's obviously having an awesome year, and love playing with him.
I watched this offense play, and it feels like it's like the Golden State Warriors on a lacrosse field. Like, the passing is crisp, the movement is there. Like, it's so fluid and fun to watch. Though I think if there's anything, it's almost like sometimes you guys are almost too unselfish, and it takes you to the end of the shot clock. Like, what in the back of your head, or what do you talk about as a team in terms of knowing when to make that extra pass and knowing that sometimes, like, maybe the shot that you have stepping down might be the best one you're going to get in a possession? Yeah,
it's a balance, and I think that's something that every team, right? Every team at the pro level is pretty loaded, and I think everybody knows that in order to be successful, you have to be unselfish and share the ball, right? I think you've seen that year over year. The guys who end up hoisting the trophy at the end of the day, oftentimes, like, really share the ball and do a nice job on that end of the field. So we definitely try to stress that, and then we also will find ourselves saying, like, hey, like, sometimes you just make the play, right? Like, go be you and go put the ball in the back of the net. So we just want to generate as many high percentage shots as we can. And whether that comes from a feed or, from a dodge, I think, and we've seen, Matt Moore and now Connor Fields do a really nice job, kind of winning their matchups. And anytime you have that, it really opens up the rest of the offense. So we're hopeful that we can kind of continue to do that and find that balance, to your point of, when's the extra pass needed and when's, the time to kind of shoot it. So ongoing process, but hopefully we can kind of continue to execute here.
I find this an interesting year for the PLL because you think about each of the first 3 years since this league's inception. They've all been very unique in nature. Of course, you had the first year, then the COVID year, then last year, the integration of the leagues. How would you describe this year? Does it feel, I wonder, more settled, or what's the dynamic, the vibe like, here in year 4 now as you kind of maybe get into a groove?
Yeah, that's a great point. This is the first one that feels just like a regular season, right? You mentioned, like, the first one was just, it was so new. It was all so exciting. The second one, with COVID, and then last year kind of like on the back of COVID. So it's, kind of settling into having that, quote unquote normal regular season. It's been fun, because you're really just focused on playing and just focusing on winning games and getting better as a team. I think you're also seeing, teams, really kind of grow and shift, but also have like their original identity year over year, which has been kind of fun to see. So you know that your opponent's pretty well. There's only 8 teams in the league, so you kind of know what you're up against, and it's really just on you to be better than the other team game by game. So it's been a blast, despite it being normal. It's been really exciting, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, obviously the competition every week is very exciting and a lot of fun, like you mentioned. For you, it's interesting because you spent 5 years, I think, in the MLL with the machine, and now this is your 4th, so 9th overall. Does it feel like year 9, or does it feel like you're like it's been like 2 halves, right, of your career? I don't. What's the feeling like for you at this stage of your life?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, like my body feels pretty good. I don't feel like I've been out there too long, or I'm too exhausted or anything like that. So that's a plus. But I'd say, in talking to a bunch of guys around the league who've kind of, been around this, the past year and a half, really this one, it's the first time you're kind of looking around training camp and you're like, man, there's a lot of new faces here, and all these guys can really play. So it's been fun, in that sense. And I have a few teammates, on the Archers who have, Marcus Holman and Dominique Alexander in particular, like those guys. I've played every professional game I've ever played alongside those guys in the field, at least in MLL and PLL. So it's been a really cool journey, and it's been really fun. And despite it being, your first normal, in the groove PLL season, it's just, it's been really exciting to be a part of, and, it makes you want to win that much more. And, that's the goal at the end of the day. So it's been really competitive. It's been really fun, and I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah. You mentioned the new faces. It's especially from the MLL days, for me having, watched the transition of the 2 leagues, and it's new, and it's an influx of young talent. And you've got Matt Moore, who's really performed well in his rookie year. I wonder, because we've got a lot of rookie, second-year guys who will step in, and we've always seen this in professional lacrosse. You step in for a game or two, have a couple of good games or a good half a season, but you can't elongate that. What's the difference between somebody who can step in and have a good year or so and then kind of fall off the radar, and somebody who can step onto a field in the competition just to be on a field in the PLL and maintain that over the course of a career?
Yeah, I think one of the things you see with a lot of rookies, not everybody, but, is they go from kind of being the key of the opposing team, right? Like they're number 1 on the scouting report. To kind of having a different role. And I remember going through that as a rookie, and it was like, oh, like no pole, this is great. And then I think, you kind of have that for a year or so, and then you kind of see guys settle into different roles in their teams. And, what it comes down to, and you hear vet guys around the league say this all the time, it's, year 1 to year 2 is a big one, because it's the first time you don't have the structure of a college weight program. You don't have, 5 practices a week. And it's the first time you're kind of on your own, with the support of your teammates, but at least kind of, training and being accountable, being personally accountable for your development, your training, improving, recovery, all that good stuff. So, I think a lot of times you see guys go one of 2 ways. They either embrace that and really thrive, or you see guys kind of have that great year and then, are fine, but they don't really, develop to that next step. But I think you're seeing a lot more guys. I think with the PLL, you're able to really prioritize playing, with some of the changes that have been made over the years. And I think you're seeing the direct result of that is just the competition on the field is crazy. The level of play is really high, and, guys are fighting tooth and nail for spots, and it makes for an awesome product.
I mean, you've been very consistent throughout your career, and I wonder how much does the NLL help with that too? I mean, obviously you'd like to take maybe a little more time off between seasons and all of that, but how has maybe playing the box game, in addition to everything else, how has that helped you with some of those things you just talked about and maintain that consistency?
Yeah, it's been a huge help, and that league is equally as competitive, and it's been an awesome ride. It's not one that I intended on kind of getting into, and here I am 5-6 years later, whatever it is, and it's been awesome. I think we're building something special over there in Toronto, and it's definitely developed different parts of my game, and I think has made me a more well-rounded player really in both games, kind of taking sort of a hybrid approach from box and field to whatever I'm playing at the time. Has been a really fun experience. And for box in particular, like I've been in the league for a few years, but I'm definitely still learning, and kind of it's exciting and fun, and to kind of look at things through, by no means am I an expert on field lacrosse, but I've been doing it for a long time. Whereas box, there are still like basic things, even at practice, like a drill where I don't know what to do. And I feel like I'm like a, middle school kid at a camp who can't figure out the line drill. So it's fun to go through that and continue to kind of learn that part of the game. And playing all year round, I could probably use some rest from time to time, but I just have to be a little more diligent about recovery and training and whatnot. But can't really beat it, right? Game day, you can't beat, full stadium, full arena with your teammates trying to get a W. It's a pretty good deal, and something that I'm going to try to do for as long as I can.
Speaking of things where nobody knows what to do, sixes. You're coming off the first ever time in the World Games for the men's program. The first time we saw sixes really in a competitive environment with something on the line. As somebody who's been around the sport, what's your feel for what you guys played over the course of a week down in Alabama?
Yeah, it's different. You kind of have an idea of what to expect, and the only way you can really learn it is to play. And to be a part of that was a ton of fun. To see the World Games and kind of I couldn't believe the scope of it. I had an idea of what it looked like, but it's 3,700 athletes and across all these different sports and all these different countries. It was just the event itself was very, very cool. And I think, it kind of gives you a mini feel of what the Olympics would, potentially feel like. And that's certainly exciting. And in terms of the result, it's obviously not the one that, I would have wanted or the U.S. would have wanted. But I think, in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot to learn from that. And I think we'll certainly, take what we can from it and improve, whether whoever the roster is, whoever ends up on that team eventually. And, it's all part of the process. And anytime you step on the field, you want to win and you want to compete. And, we had a tough result there for sure. But, all we can do now is learn from it and try to improve in the grand scheme of things.
Strategy-wise, looking at what you saw other teams do while you were there or what you guys tried, were there things that you felt like worked? What was there things that surprised you about just the strategy and the way people were trying things throughout the tournament? Because this is fresh slate. Nobody really knows what can be successful in this thing. So what strategies maybe surprised you, or what you see people do that was interesting?
It was interesting in that it was uncharted waters, and you see, we talked. One of the other cool parts of just the World Games is just being around these other teams and getting to talk to them. Sharing the shuttle back and forth with, Great Britain or Germany or the Aussies or Team Japan, anybody you were really playing with or against, and it was interesting to see certain teams that only practice sixes. So some of those teams, that's what they do, and they go into different tournaments throughout the year, and that's what they focus on. And, they clearly kind of executed a plan and played a certain way. And, you'd see, certain things that, they'd see a guy kind of basket hang a little bit, and they would have these different looks. And I think the more we see of the product on field, I think the more stuff like that you'll see. And then, Canada was obviously lights out, and they play box outside with more space on bigger goals and smaller goalies. So, not only, you also just have to give those guys credit. They not only did they have, kind of that plan. They were lights out. They played fast. They shared the ball. They executed. They were physical within the rules. So you got to kind of tip the cap to those guys. And but yeah, I think we'll see more and more strategy as the game gets played, right? Especially at that level, right? The more you see it, the more you see little things that work, little things that don't work. And I think everybody, right, the level of play will rise across the board. And hopefully, next time out we have a better result.
You were certainly a veteran on that squad. Why was it important for you to be a part of this team for the World Games, the Sixes squad for Team USA?
Yeah, I was kind of happy to get the call. It was a little later in the process, but I jumped at the opportunity. At anytime you get to play for your country, it's a cool opportunity. It's an honor for sure. But in this one in particular, like the Sixes game is something. This is our path to the Olympics. And there are mixed reviews as to Sixes, field lacrosse, box lacrosse, whatever, but this is the one, right? It's not changing, and I wanted to experience it firsthand. And I think when you talk to people who actually watched, I think they really enjoyed it. And it's a blast to play, and I think we're at the beginning stages of kind of understanding the strategy and how to go about it in the best way. But it was cool to be kind of an older guy on that team. And Adam Gittleman, I think, was the only guy older than me, and Gitz is, obviously a teammate of mine with the Archers, and, to kind of play that role on that team was a lot of fun, and play for Coach Shea and play for Coach Benson, and, two guys that I haven't spent all that much time with over my years in the game was awesome, and just to kind of have that experience really from both of those guys. And, frankly, I hadn't played with any of the guys on the team all that much. They were, I think, across the board were kind of new guys for me. So that was awesome. Got to know some younger guys, and overall, again, not the result we're looking for, obviously, but overall a positive experience down there, and getting to play with new guys, getting to play with that staff, learn the game hands-on. I'll take it and move on.
You've had other changes in your life. You're a dad now. Like, have you gotten noticed any of the new dad strength transitioning to the field?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it continues to kind of, it's like a slow drip. You continue to get a little stronger, but it's been a lot of fun, and my wife and I are super happy, and the baby's coming up on 7 months. And we were talking earlier, it's, she can't really get herself in too much trouble. She's not crawling around just yet, but she pretty much just smiles, eats, sleeps, and has fun. So it's a fun time. We're cherishing every moment, and it's been a real blast. It's been awesome.
She got to see you play at all?
Only on TV, but I think she's going to make. We'll see where we go in the playoffs in the PLL. I think that will be her in-stadium debut.
Wow, that's big. That's exciting.
Yeah, little added pressure for you, Tom.
Oh, 100%. I can't let her down.
That's cool. Cool. Well, we appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend. You're down in Dallas against the Atlas. Should be a good game there, too. So appreciate your time. As always, Tom Schreiber. We'll talk to you soon. All right, man?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Always good catching up with Tom. Of course, he hasn't caught up. I think a lot of times people talk about having a new baby. They don't understand, the people on the outside don't understand that the baby for the first year or so is just sitting there. So you're not running around and chasing yet. That's what sounds like he's enjoying, the fact he doesn't have to chase. But once the baby starts walking and moving, that is when the fun begins. Just from I'm a two-time godfather.
Oh, okay.
So
you've got some experience.
I've got some experience as an uncle, so I understand what they're talking about.
Are you good at the chase? Are you good at the?
I don't understand that life. I just see it from the outside.
Are you good at the chasing phase?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's the job. You're in, that's the thing about being an uncle. You can dip in for a couple hours.
You get the good stuff.
And you get to go in, and then you just all right, I go back home now. He's all yours, or she's all yours. So.
You don't have to worry about the sleep schedule and all that.
I can't imagine. So kudos to parents and all of that out there. Shout out to you.
Congrats to Tom and his wife. Terrific stuff. Anyway, let's change gears here to the college game, because we've got some different rule tweaks that have been approved by the NCAA in both the men's and the women's game. We'll start on the men's side. And this became a vocal issue down the stretch of the postseason run last year in terms of being offensive players ending up in the restricted area, but because they were pushed. And that would, anytime, the original rule with that restricted area inside the crease was that anytime an offensive player touched in there, goal was waved off. Didn't matter how you got there. Well, now, starting in 2023, this upcoming season, if the player is illegally pushed, the offensive player is illegally pushed by a defender into that restricted arc, and the goal goes in, it will count, and which is the right interpretation of the rule. They wanted to protect the goalies, I get it, but this is the right way to do it.
Talking about the goal mouth arc inside the crease, so that is where
that restricted.
Beforehand that the goal will be off and all of that, and you wonder. I mean, there's a committee that makes these rules. Why that wasn't considered to begin with? I mean, nobody knows these guys. Nobody should know a lot of these players and these teams better than them, and you might imagine that could be something they projected out, like, well, what if? And maybe they did, and maybe they said, okay, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. As a new rule, you're kind of trying it out. And, with not as much lacrosse the last couple of years, haven't had a lot of opportunities to try it out.
I do think, a lot of the rule initially to have that area that with that new design inside the crease was to protect the goalies. And so I think even if there was a push, the ultimate rule by the committee was we are protecting the goalies at all costs with the new crease dive. So it doesn't matter, it's the offensive players' purpose. They need to stay out of that area no matter what. They can't make contact with the goalie. They can't go in that spot. But, then you have the caveat that, all right, defenders go, all right, cool, you're on the crease, I'm just going to shove you right in. Because I'm already, it's like a fouling a guy on a breakaway in basketball. Unless there's some kind of consequence, everybody's just going to hack away and you can destroy somebody. So that the bucket doesn't go and you make them earn it at the free throw line. In this case, you make them bring it out and score on a man up. So I think that's where the issue was, but this is the right play. It becomes on the onus of the defender. Okay, if I'm going to push a guy, I have to also make sure I'm protecting my goalie. Because, this guy can land in there and land right at my goalie. So I can't push the offensive player into my goalie because I got to protect him.
Yeah, and that's the reason for the rule. That's the reason they put the goal mouth in there to begin with. And obviously people made fun of it. Said crease within the crease. You can't go in this crease, but you kind of can go in one. But if you're going to have this be a part of that too. So hopefully it'll look a little bit cleaner. And now you just have, the byproduct is you have to have the official try to make that decision on the fly of whether that push happened or not. And I think that will be that's always going to be a part of the crease violation and now the goal mouth violation. So that's just something to prepare you for. So get ready for some of those debates too.
Yes.
Any other nuances that you would implement here? Now we don't have another, I don't think, rules section for another couple years, but any other thing that maybe you can see coming or would like to see here the next time they revisit some of these rules?
I mean, this isn't a nuanced thing. This is the number one thing I think that the men's game is missing. It's the 2-point arc. We've seen it for now 20 plus years in the pro game. We've seen it have success. It doesn't change the game all that much, that drastically. But you look at this Redwoods Atlas game this past weekend in the PLL. Without the 2-point arc, that is a drastically different game, and it's not nearly as exciting. We see the 10-man ride and these goals being scored from midfield in the college game all the time. And that should be worth more than one. And you know what? That changes strategy. It changes a lot of stuff. It changes the way you have to position people. It changes the way you have to defend. It changes where somebody's going to shoot from. And there's so many things that can change. It can just change the excitement level of having it be a 2-goal game with 30 seconds left instead of it being over. It's still a thing because even if you don't have a guy who can shoot from 2, maybe you get lucky and one goes in. That's to me, we've seen it be successful at the PLL level and the MLL level. I just don't know why it's not worth throwing out there, at least experimenting with in the fall, see what it looks like, and then go from there.
I think it does. You see this in the PLL. It makes other guys a little more valuable, in terms of some of those pulls that can come down and shoot, or even a short stick that can let it loose if they really try, if they're on a break. So I do think it helps, if you're going to do that, it does increase the value of other guys on your team outside of just some of those attacking midfielders or attackmen on the offensive side of the field. So I do think that is what that would bring. The more value to a great defenseman that can also shoot, or a great pole and an LSM that can also go down in transition. As there already is value there, as some of those guys are able to score at a high level, but I think that really ups the ante and creates just a different layer of who is going to impact things for your team. And I think that helps. I think that makes the game more interesting.
And you know what the other thing is? Like, we've seen a lot of defenses against a way to try to slow teams down as you pack into a zone. And we've seen some defenses, even with the shot clock, and actually especially with the shot clock, pack into a zone. You dare people to shoot from deep, but it's not hurting them if somebody, like, as nearly as much if somebody scores from deep. They go, all right, you scored from deep. It's harder than scoring from on the crease, so we're going to keep making you shoot there. Well, if there's an extra incentive to shoot from deep, we see it in the NBA, like when there's the incentive to shoot from further out and that's worth more, then, like, you've got to press out as a defense, and I think it would make that game more exciting, and it takes away some of the, all right, we're just going to pack it in and dare you to shoot from deep because it's still only worth one, so who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah,
you could see some different things happen for different teams, too.
Yes.
I mean, the game might change. Who knows? I mean, you see that with the three-point arc. It took a while, took a few decades, but the NBA has changed completely because of that.
But for the people in college that are worried about changing the game, like, we've seen it now for 20 plus years. It hasn't changed the pro game. Like,
no.
the pro game, even with the 2-point arc, it is still a pretty small part of how the game works. It maybe changes a little bit spacing in late game situations or whatever, but it has not drastically changed the game we've seen at the professional level with it.
Yeah, I would say from the PLL wise, looking at their rules, the smaller field has changed the game more than anything else.
I would agree.
You know what I mean? The shot clock was always lower, in professional lacrosse, but the fact that the PLL field is shorter, I think, has made the bigger difference in terms of the up and down and the flow of the game more than the 2-point arc had in 20 years.
Yeah, I would say.
So I think
Absolutely.
that has made a big difference.
For sure.
On the women's side of things, introducing instant replay as well is something that's been on the equation. So being able to use the TV footage or the school footage of what happened in the game, being able to coaches given a couple challenges to be able to review, timing issues, whether a ball left a stick, whether a ball is over a goal line, and things of that nature, which obviously I think who would argue against that, number one? I know the only thing I think we'd argue against is these games are long enough, and that does not speed up the game, and I think people at this point want to speed up the women's game more to prevent these games from going to 2.5 hours to 3 hours. Sometimes you see them go, and I think that's the only thing that would give you the drawback here. But obviously, if you're going to make the right call, that's kind of worth it.
So a couple of things to note of this NCAA rule. It's possible replay for the women's game. However, it has to be approved by conferences. Conferences can apply to have instant replay for their league games only for 2023. So it's a very experimental situation. If the coaches and the conferences decide we're in, it's only for league play. So the Big Ten, the ACC, whoever can decide, but it only will be for their league games here for this year. They are expected to have access to all replay angles. So anything that the TV crew can see, they can see. And like you said, it's for the clock issues, shot being released at the end of a clock, crease issues, I think, are big ones.
Yeah.
Ball crossing the line, does it actually go in or not? Those are the main things that would be replay. 2 requests per team per game, but you keep those requests as long as you keep getting them right.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of like that. Some of these replay rules, like you see it, whether it's basketball or baseball, like where you have a set limit and you can't then keep requesting replays even when you get them right. I don't get, because it shouldn't be a strategy thing of what you call for review. It should just be about getting it right. Like, let's make sure we get it right.
You shouldn't get penalized for the official getting the call wrong.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah. Like if you're reviewing, like in football, when you review an obvious thing and it gets overturned, like you shouldn't lose a review there.
Yeah.
But people do.
Yeah. But I think the speed of the game is part of the reason for all of that. And
no, you're right.
But college football games, that they have automatic reviews left and right. I'd rather have the challenge version than at the drop of a hat. You see a college game, a close touchdown, you're gonna be sitting around for 10 minutes. And those games go 4 hours. So they've got a whole other basket of issues there. So we talked about it with the men, and just to briefly here, the women's game, if you're going to, I think, continue to look at how to make the game better, and it is very entertaining right now. I think it's about as some of the changes they made over the last few years. From watching not only the Women's World Championships a few weeks ago, but also Athletes Unlimited, the 10-on-10 format to me, just the space involved and the ability, and these athletes are so creative and so athletic, it gives them the room to do so. Not that they don't currently when they're 7-on-7, but the 6-on-6 in the offensive end, I think, really makes a clean difference.
Yeah.
And just the viewer watching it, you don't have things that's clogged up in the middle. It's just a little bit different. I think if you're going to look maybe in the future, add something in or take something out, I guess this would be, is you take one player off the field and make it a 10-on-10.
We saw it with the international game. The spacing for all these incredible athletes to be able to work was awesome. And on top of the great offensive plays we also saw really good defense.
Yeah.
And that was without a shot clock. So you have the shot clock still in, and you still continue with that shot clock to reward great defense. Because if you play 80, 90 seconds of defense, you're going to get a stop. So you're still rewarding that, but the spacing and the ability for these athletes to just go and to me was more fun to watch.
Yeah, I think that obviously there's things that the international board needs to figure out in terms of rules right now, but I think a lot of that it really comes to how it's officiated more than anything else. I mean, there was a lot of whistles. I mean, there's a ton of whistles during especially some of the bigger games. I think and more so that needs to be just on the instruction of the referee and official on what to call and when to call it. I don't know if that's a rule change that needs to happen, but I think that would make the game even more entertaining, and that's what you saw. If you just look at it from, take the whistles out of it, the 10-on-10 was a good product at the end of the day. I really enjoyed that. And you see that with the Athletes Unlimited, too.
Yeah, it's fun. They also have the 2-point arc in the Athletes Unlimited game, which I think is another thing to add in. Is fun. You see Charlotte North do it. We're going to talk to Amanda Johansen about that in a second. Things would have to change for that to happen, but some things to think about down the road.
Yeah, I think that's what the summer is for, to think about these things and hope maybe we'll speak them into fruition.
We're trying. Anyway, Athletes Unlimited, week 2 of their season coming up this weekend, once again at USA Lacrosse headquarters in Sparks, Maryland. One of the captains here for week 2, a first-time captain, Amanda Johansen, former USD Trojan, joined us earlier today. So as we get ready for week 2 of Athletes Unlimited, Amanda Johansen, one of the captains for week 2, joins us now. First time for you being a captain, Amanda. What was the draft process like here this week?
It was definitely fun. It was a little stressful just because I knew the other captains that I was going up against kind of had the same mentality as I did and how we wanted to build our team. So it was challenging, but I'm really happy with how it turned out.
What was your mentality and how you built your team, if you can take us inside?
I basically tried to base it off of our week 1 Orange team. I feel like we had a ton of players that were just unselfish, gritty, just did the little things, and I tried to find those same type of people, but so did the other captains.
Yeah, everybody has a similar strategy. Have you played fantasy football? Is it like that? You're trying to just fill out your roster and you've got slots and you're writing them in?
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought that I was going to be, unique, where I was able to, in my head, I was like, I'm going to fill the middies and get the best defensive team. And then because I think all of our attackers are so awesome. At the end of the day, I could just grab, 3 attackers. But then right when I picked my first defender, everyone else started to go defenders too early. And it was definitely challenging, but it was fun.
That's great. The runs happen and you don't expect it. It's probably a little more pressure than you almost out of your control. You're like, oh no, what do I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you go in it with a plan. And then literally the first pick the other captain had, I was not expecting that. It just messed up my whole plan.
Good. Well, your team still looks good. I think everything will be okay. I mean, you're the captain of the team. Obviously, you played really well in the first weekend. What do you attribute that to? Do you just feel like you were in really good shape heading into play this year? What was the difference for you?
I just think it was the people that I was around, honestly. every time I go out there, I just try to be a solid midfielder. I work on between the 50s, transition, defense, draw. But just the crew that I had, obviously they got a lot of attention with the type of players that they are, and it allowed openings for me. I also just feel like, I felt good coming into here. I felt like I haven't played lacrosse and competitive lacrosse in quite a bit, and I was just excited to get out there. So I thought that I would just, every opportunity I had on the field, I was just going to go full out 100%. And it worked out well this weekend.
Yeah, if you guys didn't catch it, Amanda, 7 goals in 3 games, also picked up a whole bunch of draws, back-to-back hat tricks, really played well and starred there. And that's why the captaincy was earned for sure.
Yeah. Amanda, obviously you didn't get a chance to play the full year last year. So what did you learn from playing that back half of year 1 about this league and what it takes to be successful that you've kind of used to jump off here to a fast start in year 2?
I think so. Coming in last year as a facilitator for a few weeks, just because I was injured. So it just really made me hungry to want to, get back to being a player and step on the field. But I think from last year in general and playing, to be successful in this league, you really can't focus on your individual performance or points. If you just do your job, if your team does well, if you win the quarters, if you win games, you're going to make your way up on that leaderboard. And just because my team was so successful, that's how, the whole Orange team, I'm pretty sure, ended up in the top 10. So really it's just team play matters, and your team matters, and just the little things really do add up.
What's it take to click quickly with a new team each week? Obviously, you already had just 1 week of play, but like you said, it's kind of a different animal. How do you figure out how to get chemistry over the course of just 3 games and then you're done?
Yeah, it's a little challenging at first, but I think it's important. So last week we clicked pretty quickly because a lot of us had played previously together and we kind of know what people want. But I think it's important to kind of be to find what your goal is, say on offense or on defense, find the point people for that goal, and then be okay with having a role around that. So I think when you, for me this week with my team, I want to know what everyone likes to do on the field. And then from there, we're going to establish a way to play around that. You want to play to your team's strengths. And then I also think that a little bit of team bonding always helps. So yeah, we all know each other, but it's nice to get a little more comfortable with each other. So today, first thing we did when we got out to practice was just do a little game about each other. And then you go out there and you just try to mesh for a little bit. You don't have much time, but everyone's so skilled. And with communication combined with that skill, you can kind of click pretty fast.
As just to follow up quickly, as the captain, are you are you leading that stuff, the drills? Is that on you now to kind of dictate a lot of that?
Yeah, it's on the captain, but ultimately, most captains and the way that I'm doing it is I'm designated, Becca Block is an absolutely sick defender, so I'm going to designate her to lead the defense. And then I kind of split offensive roles with other people. I like to hear everyone's ideas. At the end of the day, yes, I'm going to make the final decision, but most of the time it really just comes from everybody. So it's really a group effort. But last week, Sam was our captain. We're going to listen to every single thing she wants and she says, but she opens the floor to all of us to input our ideas. And then from there, we kind of go forward with one final decision.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. How cool is it to have the opportunity to pick players like Alyssa Perella, who obviously was a player you coached at Hofstra, and Izzy McMahon, a player from your alma mater at USC. What's it like to kind of get some of those players together and have a chance to play on the same team as them?
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Last year, Alyssa and I joked because we didn't, out of all 5 weeks, even when I was a facilitator, we were never on the same team. And then this year, first week and second week, we get to play together. I just think it's awesome. I'm really proud of them and the players that they've become. I got to see them really grow. I know how incredible they are in the field, and I would like the opportunity this week to be able to work around their style and kind of get them going and just show everyone what they have. I think Alyssa just has so much speed and she can score goals at ease. And it's so great to have someone like that on the midfield, where I think our middies besides her are pretty defensive minded. So she's huge for us. And then with Izzy, she's just so powerful and shifty. And if she's on, she's really, really on. So I'm really excited for her as well this week.
Travis, alluding to your time at USC, obviously on the East Coast for a lot of your life too. How would you compare the two coasts? Like, I think there's obviously the stereotypes there. From your experience, what were each of those experiences like for you?
So a few different things. One, obviously the weather. Lacrosse is a totally different sport on both sides because of that. Like I really hate the cold. It's really tough. And I give props to every player that's in college on the East Coast going through season in the middle of winter, basically outside. That's rough. But those players are tough, and lacrosse is huge, obviously, on the East Coast. And then on the West Coast, we've got beautiful weather. I absolutely loved playing there. It was so great, and the sport's growing a little bit more. But I think the cool thing about it is, like, the people on the West Coast, they understand that they have it a little bit better with the weather. So I think that they do things to kind of, just speaking from my past experiences, like I felt like we challenged ourselves and worked even harder knowing that we were outside in beautiful sunshine all the time. Where like on the East Coast, you go out there knowing that you're battling the weather and all these conditions and you're still working hard and getting better. So it's a totally different game. I mean, for me, who's really sensitive to the weather, but I don't know if other people would say the same.
Yeah, you were in your interview, you talked about how much you love the heat. You said nothing under 60, Amanda? Nothing?
Yeah, I mean, people always made fun of me on the sideline at Hofstra, telling me just like, you didn't move like the whole time because I just like stood there. Yeah, it's rough. I don't know. I will fully admit I'm an absolute baby with the weather, but I love the East Coast. I live here. It's great.
I mean, you went to USC, so you made the right choice.
That was the right decision.
That made a lot of sense.
I'm really, really happy with my decision.
Speaking of USC, what are your feelings about your alma mater joining the Big Ten and what that could mean for that women's lacrosse program?
I think it's so exciting. I mean, Pac-12 was an awesome conference, but I think just moving to the Big Ten and getting all these new opponents and the travel and just, I think it just helps grow the game as well too. I mean, it's huge, and I'm really excited for them, and I'm excited for the coaches, and it'll be great to see them compete against teams like Northwestern and Michigan and Ohio State. And I don't know, I'm excited, just to be able to watch them.
Is it crazy to kind of wrap your head around that though too? Like knowing like the travel and stuff involved?
Yeah, it is really crazy. I think especially because I had the mindset of when I played, we were MPSF. And then I thought it was so cool for them to become Pac-12. And now they're going to Big Ten. I feel like it also just shows, the level there and the growth and just from where we started, because I was my freshman year was the first year of the program, to where they are now. I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's really cool for sure. Something else I wanted to ask you about, I did some LinkedIn snooping. And on there you have that you're a certified sports nutritionist. Obviously you've done schooling and everything like that. Your advice to like a young athlete looking to eat right, because I feel like a lot of that stuff goes a little bit under the radar. And I remember as a young athlete, I didn't really know what to do. What would be your is there tried and true things that you would give someone advice to eat or do to be able to supplement trying to be a great athlete?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, especially I think for young females, would be to not worry about staying away from things, but to more try to incorporate more things. So like you're giving somebody advice, it's not don't eat this, it's bad for you, but it's like, hey, after you just played, try to also eat this, it has protein in it, or try to get this before you play for energy. And I think it's more so like fueling yourself and energizing and doing everything to benefit your performance and your recovery and how important food is versus things to stay away from. Just like along with that, the reason why I was so interested in that and I did it is because when I was younger, I only really, this is so terrible, but I only ate like candy and Caesar salad. And I played every sport. I was always running. I was crazy athlete, and I lived on that, and I didn't know why. Every time after I played, I felt like I was going to faint and I didn't feel good. Got to college and I'm like so gung-ho about being the best I possibly could. I started looking more into nutrition and I changed my diet, and I started to eat more so for what I wanted to eat, but also for performance. And just, I saw such a big difference. And I just think it's huge to really just add more and more of the important stuff and just allow yourself to enjoy. Obviously, if you like candy or desserts, you're welcome to have it.
I love the fuel way of thinking about it, because that's what it is. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm eating food. It's like, how are you going to fuel your day and whatever you have to accomplish? And I think for a lot of young athletes, that's the perfect way to think about it. I do want to ask about the rules with Athletes Unlimited, because there's a 2-point arc, which we really haven't seen a lot of, especially in the women's game until recently. And like you in year one had a lot of success with it. I watched Charlotte North here in week 1 of this Athletes Unlimited, and she can sling it. Would you be interested in seeing the college game with a 2-point arc?
I think so. Like, I have a couple of thoughts about it just because I think it's a huge part of the game and it's awesome. I do love that. But the rule with shooting space versus not having shooting space with us is where it kind of gets a little bit iffy. So, like, if you have that 2-point arc in the college game, you're going to have to take away a couple other rules that they already have established for that to work. But I think it could be a huge game changer. I mean, if you have the ability to, if you're down by 1 goal and there's X amount of time left, you can win it. Or if you're down by 2, you actually can stay in the game and tie it. And we saw that the other day with Kelsey Huff bringing their team into overtime with a crazy 2-point goal. So I think it's really exciting, and I would love to see it. But it's definitely been an interesting part of the game. Like, I would have never thought that I would be a 2-point shooter. Now I catch the ball and I could be like 15 yards out and I think about shooting, and it's a little odd, but it's cool to see how the game's progressed that way.
How far away do you think the game is from that, the college game I'm talking about?
I don't really know. I mean, I think that right now the college game is still a little bit more advanced than, like, their rules are still more advanced than where other changes have happened. So I think, like, first, like, international game and even in high school, that first has to catch up to college before they continue to change their game. I think it would be great to be able to see a little bit more of the same type of game across the board. I think before they put the 2-point goal in college, it would be nice to see at the high school level to, like, allow defenders in the crease, because I think that correlates more to that game change. So game changes are always fun. I love to see the new rules, but I think it's hard for the refs, honestly. I mean, it's just I love the changes. I love the advancement of the game, but I think the game is, like, pretty exciting and fun to watch the way it is right now.
Yeah. I think it's gotten better and better, it feels like, as the years have gone on. Athletes Unlimited has definitely helped that, too.
For sure.
You know, that, I mean, I think it's really helped things get people really, I think, have been attracted to the game by that, which is really cool. Amanda, we appreciate your time. We'll be cheering you on this weekend as the captain once again. Keep up the good work out there, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. Great
catching up with Amanda. Such a cool vibe out there for this few weeks of Athletes Unlimited we have each year. And they start talking about they've got the practice and really refine. I think that really helps the product and amplify it so much.
Yeah, I mean, by the time, like, they're together for a month straight. Yeah, they're got different teammates, but they're together playing lacrosse for a month straight, which I think by the end you get some really sharp playing.
And a shout out to Amanda, because, you know, I just love seeing it, and she so ready to go. You know what I mean? For these athletes, we talked about a Tom Schreiber, to be able to have the motivation and the mentality to stay in shape, be ready to go from the start, I think always is impressive. And, you know, you talk, because there's so much talk about the college kids who have that regimen on a daily basis. They have such a great rookie year after that. Now it's like, now what after that? So for veterans to go in and be so good, I think that requires just a different level of mentality. And she obviously is prescribed to that. And you can tell she's enjoying it being out there too.
Yeah, you have to be very, very determined to be a professional lacrosse player.
Yeah,
men's or women's.
It's a long off season.
It's a long off season,
right?
And it's all on you. You got to figure out how am I going to get the reps and everything I need by myself to make sure I'm ready to go. And these players continue to show that they're doing that.
Yeah, so appreciate Amanda and Tom joining us as always here today. As we finish up July, heading into August. We've got the U21 World Championships coming up, so we're excited about that. But at the end of July, we had some news happen. The Choco Taco has been discontinued by Klondike, I believe.
Yes.
Have you ever had a Choco Taco?
I have.
You have?
I really like them.
I have not.
You never had a Choco Taco ever?
And I love ice cream. So.
When I was a kid, it wasn't like a go-to, but I definitely had a handful of them.
It feels like this is a big deal.
It's a great combination of, like, you got the waffle cone texture on the outside and then the crunch bar stuff on the top of it, vanilla ice cream in the middle, a couple of layers of chocolate in there. It is a great combination, and I do not know why it has been discontinued.
Why do you think Klondike would do such a thing?
I don't know. In my estimation, it's a poor decision.
Yeah, I mean, I know they have other options. That they have the Klondike bar, and they have a very...
Klondikes are delicious. Yeah, Klondikes are messy.
Yes. Once you take a
They
bite,
fall
once you take
apart real
a
quick.
bite, you got chips of chocolate flying all over
That
the
was
place.
kind
you
of
got ice cream dripping down your hands.
It was kind of the great part of the
And you
Choco
got that-
Taco. It
and you-
came together a little bit better.
You got that like aluminum
Yep. It's a
packaging
mess.
that like gets a congeal of chocolate and ice cream melted and it's all over your hands, and it's a very bad experience.
So, if you can find a Choco Taco,
I just saw one online. You can buy one for like $1,000 now. They're going fast. So get them while they're hot.
Not worth that.
Yes.
But if you find it for like $1.99, go for that. And come back and listen to us next week.
Yeah,
we'll
be here next week, and
here
we'll
on
have more.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
more
can't
good
wait.
stuff coming up. For Tom, I'm Travis. We'll see you later.